good to go?
Well, good evening, Whitecourt. We're so glad that you came out tonight. This is an event sponsored by Let's Talk Alberta, where the goal is to do just what the name says, to get people talking. Whatever side of the issues you're on, we welcome that, we want that, and we hope tonight that there will be a really vigorous time of question and answer at the end. Right now, I'm just going to do a few housekeeping issues. You probably have already seen the washrooms are to my left. There are emergency exits out through both sides here at the front of the stage, and there's one to your right, and then, of course, where you came in. If you haven't yet had coffee or you want a drink, please go and avail yourself of those things. We have merchandise tables at the back, lots of unique Alberta-themed items. And as I was saying last night, sometimes we're a bit shy to start a conversation, but you can wear your opinion on you, and that could maybe get a conversation going. There's also a sign-up table at the back. If you'd like, you can leave your name and the town you're in with either an email or phone number, and that way, if another event comes into this area, we'll contact you and let you know. And if you would love to volunteer, we would love to have you, so you could go sign your name and tick off the volunteer box. Tonight, we have 3 speakers, and how we do this is each speaker will have a bit of time to share their presentation, and so we would ask that while the speakers are speaking, that everyone would hold their comments and their questions until the question and answer period that we will have at the end. I think we'll just get going because we're running a bit late. Our first speaker is Shane Meikle. He's a good friend, and he's been working to see Alberta be strong and free for many, many years, and he and his wife worked tirelessly to get the message out. Shane is a bit of a history buff, and so tonight he's going to bring you a history lesson, very condensed because of time, but yeah, so let's welcome Shane. Oh, did you want me to pray? Yeah, okay.
Good evening. So what I'm going to talk about is the historical relationship between Ottawa and what is now Alberta. So in the 1880s to about 1903, 1904, there was a huge American settler movement into the prairies. And they came up and they formed their own enclaves, and they were very interested in the Northwest Territories joining the United States at that time. And this really made Ottawa nervous. It was, how many people here know the little spot on the map called USONA? Okay, I live 6 miles from USONA. Anybody know what USONA stands for? It stands for the United States of North America. And it has a current population of about 6 people. But in the 1880s and 1890s, it was a thriving community of over 500 people. How many here know the town of Rimbey? Almost everybody knows Rimbey. Its original name was Kansas Ridge. The city of Airdrie, its original name was Yankee Valley. There's another little community very close to me. The whole district is called the District of Dakota. So this movement was all over what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan, and Ottawa decided that that was one of the main reasons that they were going to cut provinces out of the territories, because it is a lot easier for a territory to be absorbed by a country than it is for a province to be done. In 1903, Sir Clifford Sifton made the following quote: "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies shall go to enrich our people to the east, to build up our businesses and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity." Now, why do we care what some guy 100 years ago said on the steps of the Manitoba legislature? Well, the main reason that we care is because he was one of the main authors of the Alberta Act that formed Alberta and the Saskatchewan Act that formed Saskatchewan. In 1905, that came into being on September 1st. The Alberta Act was enacted, and it made Alberta and Saskatchewan the only two provinces to join Confederation through an act of legislation and not negotiations. How many people in here have had the chance to read the Alberta Act, the founding document that formed our province? We've got one person up here at the front. I would encourage everybody to go to the Government of Alberta website and download a copy. It's not very long, and it will give you a total insight of how Alberta was treated historically. We were written up as a province and given the name of a province, but we were given the rights and responsibilities of a territory. And we have had to fight for the rights of a province ever since. In 1913, the federal government came out with the Railway Act amendments. And what this did is it made it illegal for a regional railway to cross provincial lines. So when that came into being, if you wanted to send your grain, let's say from Stettler to Thunder Bay, you would load at Stettler on the Central Alberta Railways. You would go to the Saskatchewan border. You'd have to offload it, load it onto the next carrier for Saskatchewan. They'd carry it across to Manitoba, do the same thing at the Ontario border. Funny thing is they made all eastern regional railways exempt. It only affected the western railways. And this was why a lot of the regional railways went out of business. In fact, ultimately, it led to the demise of all the regional railways. And in 1943, a new company was formed that bought up all the assets that were available from those regional railways, and it's formed what we now know as Canadian National Railways. 1930, the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement was signed between the provinces and the federal government. And what that did is it transferred all ownership of natural resources to the provinces rather than to the federal government. And at the time of its writing, they made it very clear that Alberta and Saskatchewan were not going to be treated as the other provinces when it came to that. On December 11th, 1931, the King decreed the Statute of Westminster after it was written by the House of Lords in London. And what that did is it gave the sovereignty over land and resources to the provinces, or to the people in care of the provinces. That means by that decree in 1931, the federal government has no land in any province, including Alberta. That means that the parks are, by the decree of the King, the right and ownership of the provinces. And if we would have been enforcing that, we would never have had Jasper happen, because we could have gone in and we could have fought that fire. 1935, the Canada Wheat Board was formed. And when it was first formed, it was formed as a voluntary marketing board for all of Canada's farmers. But in 1943, it was made mandatory for all Western Canadian farmers. So what did that mean? That meant that if I was going to sell my grain and I lived in Ontario, I would pull up to my grain elevator, I would load my truck, and I could cross the line and sell my grain directly to the American market. But if I lived west of the Manitoba border, I would pull up to my grain bin, load my truck, take it into the local elevator, offload it, pull around to the far side of the elevator, buy it back from them, and then I could sell it to the U.S. market. Now, this stayed in effect until 2012. And the reason that it was finally repealed is because Alberta and Saskatchewan farmers had had enough of it. And 13 farmers had decided that it was actually worth them going to jail for. So they ran the border, and they spent between 6 months and a year in jail each in order to try and get this repealed. 1947, we discovered large quantities of oil. And at that same time, from 1947 to 1950, federal government took control of all oil pricing and all pipelines. That meant that we could not sell at our chosen price. We had to sell it at the federal government's price. And this stayed in effect, like I said, until 1950, when that was finally repealed. How many in here are old enough to remember the Great Flag Debate of 1965? There's a few in here. I'm way too young to remember that. So, in 1965, Lester B. Pearson, the then Prime Minister, decided that he wanted to have a flag that was Canadian and represented Canadians from coast to coast. So they came up with the maple leaf. The red borders signify the oceans, and the maple leaf signifies the people. Well, John Diefenbaker stood up in the House of Commons and asked why they were using the maple leaf when the sugar maple is only found in eastern Canada. And he wanted to know why they didn't use something like the Manitoba maple, which is found from coast to coast. Well, Pearson didn't like that, so he forced closure on the bill, which means that they limited debate, they would not debate it, and then he forced it to a vote. And not a single Western Canadian MP voted for the current maple leaf flag. And in 1967, on Canada's centennial, many towns and cities in Western Canada refused to fly the maple leaf. Instead, they flew the red ensign, which is still an official flag of Canada. Most people don't realize that, but the red ensign is still a flag of Canada. And they flew that one instead in protest. But by the time I started school in the early 1970s, it was already memory hold. Knew nothing about it until I was researching years later. And with as much kerfuffle as it caused at that time, it was amazing that my parents and my grandparents didn't all talk about it, but for some reason it got memory hold. So in 1973 to 1974, for a period of about 18 months, we had the oil export taxation policies, and all of Alberta's oil profits were capped. Now, you were probably told that we had an energy crisis in the 1970s. Well, if you were an oil company and you were told that your production was limited to 100,000 barrels, but if you produced 101,000 barrels, the profit from that extra barrel was going straight to Ottawa, would you do anything, produce any extra oil? Because you're not going to see the profits from it anyways. And that's what it was. It was a federal bureaucracy shortage rather than, or unshortage, rather than a shortage of actual oil. So our then Premier, Lougheed, fought tooth and nail, and after 18 months of that being in place, he was finally able to get it repealed. But they weren't done with us yet, because just 6 years later, they came out with the National Energy Program. Now, the National Energy Program had everything in it that the 1973 to 74 Act had in it, plus we now had to sell at their price to the east, and we had to give priority to the east. So we could not sell, until their demand had been met, we could not sell oil to any other markets. Now, this stayed in place until 1988, and it was repealed by Brian Mulroney, the then Prime Minister. But he didn't repeal it for because he loved Albertans. He repealed it because the oil prices had dropped so low that it cost more to administer the program than they were getting out of it. But he did use the excuse of Albertans didn't need it to a better deal. But that was because it was an election year. And so then they used that fact to repeal the National Energy Program. At the time that the National Energy Program was brought into place, then Prime Minister Trudeau said that they were doing it specifically to ensure that Alberta did not become the economic engine of Canada. During the 1980s, and Ben will talk a little bit more about that, the only good Trudeau, when he comes up. But during the 1980s, we first had the repatriation of the Constitution in 82, followed by the first Quebec referendum. And then in the 90s, we had the second Quebec referendum, which we can thank the Quebec for, because when they did it, the federal government went to the Supreme Court and said, is a province even allowed to secede from Confederation? And the Supreme Court came back and said, yes, but they have to follow this step. And then the federal government at the time took the steps that they said, and they developed that into the Clarity Act, which is what we have been following to do what we've been doing so far. We'll jump forward a couple of years to 2012, and Bill C-38, the Jobs, Growth and Prosperity Act, was brought in, which gave Ottawa control over all of Alberta's projects. That meant we couldn't do a highway, we couldn't do a pipeline, we couldn't do any major projects without Ottawa's approval. In 2016, we got federal carbon pricing. And everybody knows what that did to our oil industry at the time. 2019, we got Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act, and Bill C-48, the tanker ban off the West Coast. Now, all of these bills were dealt with last fall with an MOU that was signed by Premier Smith and Prime Minister Carney. But within 1 week of that MOU, the House of Parliament convened and voted them down. So all of these are all still in effect until they decide that they will repeal them. And now that brings us to modern time. Right now, we've got 3 bills that should be absolutely on the top of everybody's mind. We got Bill C-8, Bill C-9, and Bill C-22. Bill C-8 is still in first reading, and hopefully it'll stay there, but it is the Internet censorship law. And what this does is it gives them the right to get rid of your Internet access, and I mean completely wipe you off the Internet with the stroke of the minister's pen. And you have no recourse, you have no way to appeal it. Under that law, if that passes, you will have no recourse. So that means you won't be able to online bank. You won't be able to shop online. You won't be able to do anything that touches the Internet. Bill C-9, the anti-hate speech law. That one should scare everybody. If you are at all believe in God and believe in the Bible, if you quote the scripture under that, you can go to jail for that. If you are having a meeting such as we're having right now, and somebody takes offense to it, you can go to jail for that. If it is deemed with no actual definition of what hate speech is, so it's interpretive, so if what you are doing is deemed as hate speech, you can go to jail for that, and you can lose all of your assets at the same time. Now, Bill C-22, That one is probably, to me, the scariest of them all, because that one is the one that is actually being fought by all the social media companies at this point in time. That is the anti-encryption law. And what that will do is it will allow them to have access without a warrant to every one of your communications, whether you're communicating on Signal or Facebook or whatever. Encryption, they say that it will weaken all encryption within Canada because they will not be allowed to have a private conversation. Now, under current laws, if they want to tap my telephone, they need a warrant in order to do that. They have to prove that I've done something to the judge, enough proof that the judge believes that there's reason to do it. Under this Bill C-22, they do not need a reason. They do not need a warrant. They can just do it. So now that I have been the ray of sunshine in your lives, I'm going to ask the only good Trudeau. Well, I'm sure he's got kids, so there's more than one good Trudeau. The good line of Trudeaus to come up. Ben is very knowledgeable on the Constitution, very knowledgeable on everything that happened with the Quebec referendums, and I have grown to really respect him, even though he doesn't agree with me on everything. But without further ado, here's Mr. Ben Trudeau.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. When you say that we don't agree on everything, I'm not a separatist. So that's one thing we don't agree on. I will tell you what I am, though. I'm a sovereignist. And yeah, my name is Trudeau. If everybody asks if I'm related. 14th generation back. This is where I meet the other branch of Trudeau that has been in power twice so far to destroy our country. I was raised in Quebec, born in Montreal, in a very political family. My dad was a speechwriter, PR guy, and very involved in the back room of politics in Quebec. One of my oldest memory is holding my dad by his hand at during the Montreal Olympics in 1976, a few months before René Lévesque became premier, and my dad was talking to René Lévesque, holding me by the hands. I remember looking at Mr. Lévesque with all the flags of all the countries in the back. That's the image I still have. But I got involved very early in politics. Even here, you can become a member of a party at 14 years old, which I did, with the Liberal Party of Quebec, provincial. And it was a very interesting time in Quebec because it was during the Meech Lake Accord negotiation. So that failed in 1990. And then after that, we rolled back in another negotiation with Charlottetown, with a referendum in 92, in which referendum campaign I was very involved. So what happened in 91, our party, the Liberal Party, Robert Bourassa was a negotiator with Mulroney of the Charlottetown Accord, and us, the youth wing of the party, we didn't agree with that accord, and the leader of the party, Mr. Bourassa, used his veto against us. So during the convention, during the AGM, so what we've done, we all resigned and we left, and we started our own party in '94 named the ADQ. And our party, I was amongst the first candidates, and our leader was elected in September '94. And what's interesting is that our party gathered 7% of the popular vote of the province, which was the balance of power for the referendum. So when Mr. Parizeau became premier, and in Quebec, they do something that is very unusual for here. When a premier is elected, he actually do what its member wants him to do. So I realized that that's not the case here in Alberta. But he promised to have a referendum within a year, which he did. But he needed us, the youth bunch, to be able to cross the line to his 51%. So we were contacted, and we were, the party were the one that are actually carved the question, because we were not separatist. Again, I say I've never been separatist. We had a position that I still have today, which is to use the Constitution to the best of our ability to piss off Ottawa until they get tired of it and agree to change without a renegotiation of the Constitution. Because when Trudeau brought back the Constitution in '82, he made sure that we could never open it again. So he basically put conditions on that equals to put that Constitution in a safe and threw the key at sea. So it's impossible to change the Canadian Constitution, period. So in that campaign, referendum campaign, what's again very interesting is that we decided to keep our independence as a party. So we agreed on the question and agreed to campaign separately, because we were all targeting different groups. And it's very interesting because at the same time, there's a bunch of very specialized group that created. There was the lawyers for separation, the dentists for separation, all the professional organization create their own little campaign amongst their members. October 30th, 1995 was a very interesting vote. We had 95% of participation of all the electors of the province. In certain polls in Montreal, by 6 p.m., 100% of the people went to vote. We lost by 54,000 votes out of 4 million people that cast a ballot that day. 85,000 rejected ballots. So there was more ballots rejected than a majority for the no. And after that, it's very interesting, because after that we say, okay, we took the position as a province to say we won't separate, but we will dig in and do everything that the Canadian Constitution enables us to do to assert our sovereignty. And it's very interesting when you look at the history of Canada, because the history of Canada, they didn't start with the BNA. They didn't start the British National, the British Act. It started in April of 1534 with Jacques Cartier coming down the St. Lawrence River, and the implementation of the French colony, which then went down the Great Lake, down to the Mississippi. New Orleans was founded by Montrealers, and in fact, the first mayor of New Orleans was the Trudeau from the other branch, from the same guy who arrived in Montreal in 1647. When the English came in September 13, 1759, they won the Plain of Abrams battle, and that was the start of the Quebec independentist movement. And from there on, the French fought for their right because the English right away start taking land that has been farmed by French-Canadian farmers for over 200 years at that point. And they were taking the land to give them to Americans that want to remain faithful to the king, to loyalists. So there was a revolt in 1837 that was punished by the hanging of the 12 leaders of the rebellion. It's called the Patriots, and the extradition of 100 of them to Australia, and that created the context of the creation of Canada. The Canadian Constitution of 1867 is a peace treaty. The Canadian Constitution, it's a way to calm down everybody. And it was meant to solve a problem between Lower and Upper Canada by bringing two other provinces in to balance the power. So because of that, they were giving a lot of rights that they shouldn't have. I'm speaking of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and other Atlantic provinces afterwards that still have way more weight, including on equalization, than they should. If you speak about equalization, Everybody speak about Quebec and the money they receive, but when you actually apply the number by people, by number of people, the one that benefits the most of equalization, number one is PEI, followed by New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland. So these are the ones that benefits the most of the equalization in this country. Equalization was created, fast forward, at the beginning of the 19th century, the French Canadian, if you were French Canadian in Quebec, there was 6% of English. They were controlling 99% of the businesses, of the money. If you were French Canadian living in Griffintown in Montreal, it's a little area in Montreal, your life expectancy would have been 19 years old. You couldn't have any loan from any banks. So they decided to create their own bank. It's called the Caisse Populaire des Jardins today. And Caisse Populaire des Jardins, it's a co-op. It's now the largest co-op in North America. Out of 9 million Quebecers right now, 7.8 million have an account at Caisse Populaire des Jardins. Caisse Populaire des Jardins have assets of $500 billion of deposit, private deposit from Quebecers. And it's the first institution that Quebecers think of when they think about moving money, about having a mortgage, it's very important for Quebec. Following that, they know that the golden rule, who holds the gold rule. 1957, the Canadian government decided to put permanent the taxes, the income tax. And Quebec say, well, then we want our own. So Quebec start collecting their taxes in 1957. In 1965, the Canadian government started the CPP, Canadian Pension Plan. Quebec say, we're not interested in your pension plan, we'll do our own. So they started their pension plan. 60 years later, the Canadian Pension Plan have an asset of $700 billion for 22 million insured. The Quebec Pension Plan has an asset of $500 billion for 6 million insured. It's a pension plan that performed 3 times what the Canadian Pension Plan ever performed. And on top of that, there was condition when they started to impose at least 40% invested in Canada. So nowadays, the Quebec pension plan owns probably more real estate in Alberta than the Alberta government in terms of retail. They own the Cross Iron Mill in Calgary. They own the Edmonton Outlet Premium in near the airport. They own Londonderry Mall in Edmonton. They own a couple of towers in Calgary. They have for $70 billion of assets in real estate. I'm saying all that because all that is things that as a province of Canada, we can do. We don't need a referendum. We don't need permission. It's constitutional. Everything that is borderline constitutional has been fought by Quebec. If we decide to apply it with our own twist to it, because we're very different from Quebec, I can assure you, we technically can solve a lot of grievance and problem that we have. Do you know that Quebec has 38 right now? They have 38 embassies around the world. When you're Quebecer and you're in Paris, you don't go to the Canadian Embassy, you go to the Maison du Québec. You do the same when you're in London, New York, Tokyo. Quebec has 2 representatives at the UN, not under Canada, under Quebec directly. So it's all things that are allowable in our constitution. Quebec deals with all of their economic development across the world. As for the equalization, Quebec don't even know that it exists. It's a non-issue for them. They don't know. And I'm saying that because, again, it's important because it's been used even recently to pit us against Quebec and create even more grievance when we can have a super good ally in the movement that we're in right now by bringing Quebec in, by making links with them, by creating a committee, a commission. I believe my vision for the future of this province is to have a commission Alberta Quebec where we carve how we want to deal with Ottawa because we both don't like how the control that Ottawa has, and then we could come with not with a proposal but with a conditional agreement with Ottawa and bring other provinces in because we know that the Constitution cannot be European. So even constitutional question, they're irrelevant because we won't end up having a deal. And why? Because we need at least 50% of the population representing 7 provinces. And I just told you, the 4 provinces that benefit the most of the period creation, up to 28% of their provincial budget in Nova Scotia is the equalization. So just because of that, for sure, we cannot touch the constitution of this country. So I'm talking about all that in that book that I wrote. I went back to Quebec history. I go to how Quebec operates. I go as well, we always speak of Alberta as being landlocked. Well, it's for us, just for us to contact. There's 40,000 people that live in Northwest Territory. It's just for us to go and sit with them and incorporate them. That we can do as well under the Constitution. We need a referendum in Northwest Territory and in Alberta, and Northwest Territory could become Alberta. And if we do that, then we have access to the North Sea, which is open year-long in Nunavik. And then we can bring our pipelines down there as much as we can, because as much as we want, because that becomes all provincial land. And we can do all that only with a majority government at the legislature, a willing government, a government that has courage to do bold things and to bring back money in our pocket. We collect between 500 million and 700 million of royalties every week. And we deposit all that money at the CIBC in Toronto. Every weekend, Toronto makes 2 to 3 million in their banking industry with our money. Why don't we put that in ATB? Why don't we put that? We have 13 provincially regulated cooperative. Why don't we give that to our co-op? Because co-op are limited to what they can borrow, what you can borrow from them based on their on the money they hold. Well, if you start just taking royalty and just deposit it in cooperative in Alberta, that would increase their capacity to do stuff just by keeping our money here instead of sending it to Ottawa or to Toronto, every Friday afternoon. So my call for Alberta, it's twofold. First, I encourage everybody to speak to everyone, your neighbors and all that, to go vote on October 19 on that referendum. And we need to vote not for the status quo. It's super important. It's our chance to say what we want. And secondly, I believe that it's time to dream. It's time to cast a vision. It's time. This is what I do in that book. I just elaborate a bunch of projects that could cast a vision, that people give a goal to achieve more sovereignty. And finally, we need to push our government to take bold action, not just window dressing. Bold action, and that starts by keeping our money here. That starts by refusing to be pulled over by Ottawa on a country road in this province. That starts by taking what our Constitution allows us to take. So thank you very much. And on that, I will invite my good friend Chris Scott, who will be the last speaker tonight. And well, I guess that he doesn't need any presentation. And he's running.
Don't smash my snake.
Want to be bit for?
This green one, Max? Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I think I need to be over here because that's probably where the camera's looking. Thanks, Max. Jess says that while I'm driving, too. Actually, that's usually me saying that when she's driving. Well, thank you very much for coming. It's awesome to see people show up for these type of events, even though it's not like super exciting right now. You know what I mean? It's not, we don't have flags waving all over the place and there isn't a big campaign going on. It's just Albertans who are interested in information because I'm assuming you feel like something is wrong or something is amiss and you want solutions, right? You want to solve some problems, you want a better Alberta. Is that kind of why you're here? Ha! Well, that would be a solution. The other thing that I really appreciate about these Let's Talk Alberta events is that oftentimes, and we encourage this, people come to listen to us and then talk to us, people that don't agree with us. Is there anyone in the room who is opposed to the idea of Alberta becoming more sovereign or fully sovereign? Okay, only half of you. Just kidding. Nobody put up their hand. This is kind of what we're seeing more and more. However, there are times when we do events and there's 10, 15, 20% of the people that attend are opposed to the idea of Alberta independence.
Look what we got.
Oh, that's awesome. This makes me want to buy a new motorhome. Check it out. Can you see it? It's a motorhome with maple leafs all over it. That's really interesting. The reason we started the Let's Talk Alberta initiative is because we understand that there are some very important issues in Alberta. There's a very important question or series of questions that we're going to be asked in October, allegedly, and I felt like, and those our volunteers feel like, if we're going to be asked these questions, it's really important that we start talking about them and having the conversations so that we can make the best decisions going forward. Because at the end of the day, regardless of which side of the political spectrum you're on or which side of the sovereign Alberta conversation you're on, I do believe that all of us collectively as Albertans want the best for Alberta. I just think that we have different ideas of how to get there. And some of our ideas are starkly contrasting to the other. Like some people believe that we should have full state control of everything, and that's the only way things are going to be good in Alberta or in Canada. I don't share that opinion. Some believe that individual rights and liberties should be paramount because in a society that respects individual rights, the rights of the society tend to follow that. That's kind of more where I land. Some people, they believe that Alberta should continue with the status quo and just be okay with incremental gains, with the crumbs of confederation, I call them. That's not my position. That's actually Jason Kenney's position. I watched him talk about that when he debated Bruce Party. I'm more inclined to say that I would prefer an Alberta that can manage its own wealth and affairs, and if something is wrong with the way that Alberta is being managed, the people of Alberta who suffer the consequences of the management have the ability to effect change. That's what I want at its core. And in my opinion, my humble opinion at that, I believe that Alberta independence is the way to achieve that. So what I'm really after, it's not actually independence. Mr. Trudeau, Benoit, and I are more aligned on that than you might believe. My pursuit is Alberta sovereignty. And when I say sovereignty, what I mean is that we get to decide our future. We chart our own course. Independence for me is a tool. It's a means to an end. That is the way by which we get the sovereignty that I believe we need to have in order to make our own decisions. Our premier, so she says, her position is that she wants to see a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. And on the face of it, that actually sounds pretty wonderful. If Alberta could self-determine and be free of federal interference in our economy, in our industry, in our social fabric, that would be a good thing. If we could have a voice within Confederation that allowed us to change the things that we believe need to change so that our values and our principles maintain, that'd be awesome. I think that would be just fantastic. The problem is, for many reasons, of which we can talk about this later if you want, I don't believe that that is actually possible. So I believe that Alberta needs to pursue independence. Now, if I look at the position that our premier puts out about remaining and being sovereign, I would ask, if that's what our government's position is right now, why aren't they pursuing it? That's a pretty big question. And I still haven't gotten an answer. Ben mentions some things about Quebec who have done an absolutely fantastic job, for better or for worse for them, of exercising and affirming their own sovereignty. They've taken control of most of the things, if not all of the things, for which they can. One of them, and this actually, the vision of this, it makes me smile just thinking about this. Imagine 600 bureaucrats. 600 in Gatineau, Ben? Something like that? 600 Quebec bureaucrats sitting in office cubicles right across the river from Ottawa. And their entire job is to go and talk to the Ottawa bureaucrats and say, hey, you took $1.50 from us on April 17th of 2022, and we only got $1 back. Give us back the change. That's actually really exciting for me, that a province would do something so bold as demand fair treatment. Can you imagine? How dare a province demand that the unitizing federal government treat them with the respect they deserve and make sure that the money that they earn stays in their province? Wow, wouldn't that be something? So the image just fascinates me. And of course I view it like a cartoon, the cartoon Frenchman that we used to see when we were kids, but I'm sure it doesn't look like that. Then I think about what Alberta does. And I just simply don't believe that our government wants the sovereignty that they say they want. I do not believe that they believe in a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. And the reason that I stopped believing that was when I heard our premier say, we looked at the tax collection, an Alberta Revenue Agency, and it seems like it's going to be expensive and there just really isn't any appetite for it. And that made me stop what I was doing, and I was just in awe, staring at my laptop and the video, how that plays over and over and over again? Well, I listened to her say it over and over and over again. And I thought, if our government is unwilling to take the first major step to sovereignty, which is to make sure that the golden rule applies to Alberta, and that is he who has the gold rules, they're not serious about a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. How do you claim your sovereignty, the sovereignty and jurisdiction we have under the Constitution, which is a lot, as Ben explained? How do you do that if you haven't set the stage to be able to fight when necessary? And I'm not saying that we should have to fight, but I'm saying that's just the way it is. When there's two levels of government, they're always going to be competing for your money. They're going to be fighting each other for your money. The federal government wants your money so they can do things like send it to Eastern Europe to be laundered, to support initiatives that we have nothing to do with. They want your money so that they can fund gender-affirming mine-clearing operations in some Istan in the Middle East. They want your money so that they can fund initiatives that use your technology, your cell phones, to spy on you when there is a declared pandemic. That's the things that they want your money for. They want your money so they can buy fancy butter and $300 glasses of orange juice. And our provincial government, certainly not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm not talking just, our current government, but anybody in government isn't going to be perfect. But the money that our provincial government takes from us, actually gets back from Ottawa after Ottawa takes from us, is used to mostly provide services to us. And it's not perfect, but at the very least, if we don't like what they're doing, we can affect change by electing people that will change things. We can't really affect what the federal government does. Now, if our government says that they want to take all this sovereignty and become a sovereign province within Canada, and they haven't positioned themselves to have these fights with the federal government when the inevitable happens, and that is they butt heads over a policy, for instance, over a carbon tax, or perhaps over, in Quebec's case, over language laws. This is an interesting fact that I didn't know until a couple weeks ago. Quebec has gone to the Supreme Court 4 times now. They're on their 5th time fighting. The Supreme Court is challenging their language laws because the Quebec language laws are unconstitutional. And Quebec says, okay, it's unconstitutional, take us to court. all the federal government can do is take them to court. And then the Supreme Court says, hey, Quebec, your language laws are unconstitutional. Quebec says, and they go back and they change a paragraph and they impose it again, and then they go back to the Supreme Court 5 years later. If Alberta tried to do that, say Danielle Smith became the Iron Lady that I believed she was, and she still could be, I guess, if she chooses to, and she said, no, Mark, we're not going to we're not going to impose a 600% increase on industrial carbon tax. As a matter of fact, we're going to accept that the policy of the United Conservative Party that I'm a part of has put a policy in place that says CO2 is not a pollution and we shouldn't be fighting it. And we're not going to collect your carbon tax anymore. We're not going to impose that. Well, right now the federal government would say, okay, we're not sending you your transfers, because we don't collect our taxes. The Alberta government collects corporate taxes, yes, but when it comes to your personal taxes, you fill out 2 forms, and they both go to the Receiver General. And that's where our money goes. So if we try and fight something that the federal government is doing to interfere in our sovereignty or in our jurisdiction, the federal government has the gold, and they rule. Do you see how this works? So how can anybody claim that they want to fix things, they want to remedy the inequities within Confederation, become a sovereign province in all aspects as they can, and fail to do the primary thing that sets the stage so that you can have those inevitable fights in the future? Setting that aside, setting the constitutional things aside and the court battles aside, one of the things Ben mentioned about our royalties going to Toronto and deposited in CIBC and them reaping the benefits of holding that money over the weekend, if our government isn't willing to do those small things, those what I would call incremental gains, the Confederate crumbs, the Confederation, I better not say Confederate, the Confederation crumbs that Jason Kenney is so in love with, if they're not even going to do that, how can we take them seriously? This is the problem that I have. This is the conflict that I'm going through right now. Because if our current government did what they said they wanted to do, I would be ecstatic. But I'm not seeing it. And that tells me that Albertans have to start having these conversations more. We have to understand what provincial sovereignty is and how we get it. So when people tell us, hey, this is the path we're going to take, we want you to support us in government so we can take this path, we can say, well, hold on a second. If this is the path you're advocating for, what steps are you going to take? And if you're not going to take the appropriate steps, how are you serious? I've talked a number of times about creating the parade that the politicians want to get in front of. But what we've seen in the past few years are politicians identifying where the parade is going, getting in front of it, and then turning them back onto the course that they want to go in. And it's bothering me. So how do you fix it? How do we fix this? Well, the first step is education. The first step is talking to your friends, talking to your neighbors, and bringing these things up. We have to start talking about them. And as you can see, the room is certainly not full here by any means tonight, which means that now, if you believe in Alberta sovereignty and you want things to change, regardless of whether you want an independent Alberta or a sovereign autonomous Alberta, it doesn't matter. You still have to learn these things and take them with you where you go. When you go home, you have to have these conversations with your family. You have to have these conversations with your workmates and your peers and your colleagues. And you have to be bold about it. You have to be willing to take just a little bit of that abuse that I take on that fancy computer back there when I say anything about what I believe or what my opinions are. We have to stop worrying about what people are going to think about us. Because the other side that wants the status quo and doesn't care going over the cliff with the rest of Canada with, out of control inflation, in a technical recession now, it feels like society is tearing apart. The trajectory is not good. And the ones that like it, the ones that benefit from the status quo are very noisy. And they gaslight. And they use emotional attacks to make you feel like your opinion and your concerns aren't valid. They tell you that you're a bad person because you're not okay with the incremental Confederation crumbs. They make you feel like you're part of a small fringe minority. That was great, by the way. I just made t-shirts of that and made money. But they're not quiet. And they're not meek. They're not shy to paint or to decal a van with their opinion, or a motorhome or whatever it is, with their opinion, and drive it across Alberta, sharing their opinion with others. And that's why Albertans who believe in Alberta and self-determination have always had a problem making progress, because we're too damn scared of what other people might think. So when we talk about this organization in particular, Let's Talk Alberta, my goal isn't to tell you how to vote. I'll share my opinions and I'll advocate for what I believe to be true. But at the end of the day, I want to have a conversation with you. And if you don't believe that what I'm saying is true, or you have a challenge or an opposing point, I want to talk to you about it. I want to make sure, and we want to make sure, because when you see one of us up here, there's 20 of us in the background doing the actual work, 20 of them doing the actual work. We want to make sure that there's an opportunity for everyone in Alberta, corner to corner, cities, rural, whatever. We've spoken in towns where there's a population of 8, and there's still 30 people there. Everybody needs to be able to participate in the conversation. That's what Let's Talk Alberta is about. And so I just want to say thank you, folks, for being here, being willing to listen and learn something and hopefully contribute and challenge these ideas, so that as we go forward as a society, as Albertans, we can make sure that we have the tools and the courage to have the conversations that we need to have to change the world in the way that we want to see it changed. That's all I have for now. We're going to go for a little bit of a break here. Before we do, I want to say thanks to Z and the Crown and Anchor for providing that absolutely amazing food. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to tell you a bit of an encouraging story. At one point, I was in a position in my life where I was politically apathetic, not involved in civics really whatsoever, completely ignorant to our Constitution, completely ignorant to actually what my rights were, what the laws were, how anything worked, and I found myself staring down the government. It was an uncomfortable spot to be in. I found myself in a position where I had to stand up and be bold with my opinions, even though I believed that my opinions probably weren't the popular opinion, and I thought that the consequence of me being bold was probably going to be my demise as a business person. I thought I was going to lose everything. But I did it anyway because I believed in it. And I'm principled, and I stand by that. For better or for worse, I will own my opinions. It was not an easy journey. And some think, or some look at the things that we had to do and that I went through, and they say, oh man, Chris, I'm sorry you had to go through all of those terrible things. And now I say, you know what? Don't be sorry for me. These were the best things that could have happened to me, because all of those things that happened that were uncomfortable or difficult brought me to where I am today. And one of the other things they did is they brought me close to people like Z, who also stood up for himself and was bold and courageous and stood on his principles. And dozens and now hundreds and possibly thousands of other amazing, good, courageous people that I never would have met. I never would have had any idea that so many people felt the same way as we do. I never would have known. I would have went through the rest of my life being quiet and letting the people that love the status quo and benefit from it continue to keep us under their boot. So the moral of this story is even though we might be going through things that seem difficult or troubling or treacherous or whatever, at the end of the day, our experiences make us who we are, and they bring us together. Some will move away from us, but we find our tribe. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for all of you folks, and I'm very grateful for all of the volunteers with Let's Talk Alberta that make these things possible so that we can share these things with you. Thank you very much. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right, so we're going into intermission mode. We'll see you in about 10-15 minutes. I want to show you something. This is what we're referring to, this thing here, the Forever Canadian. I just found this in Onaway, actually. Forever Canadian stuff there, right?
Max, I think Let's Talk Alberta needs to put together a bus.
A bus. Well, in that case, we need to get some money. Okay, now the real intermission when I set up everything. We just came online. They just issued a 2-minute warning, so you should be there soon. Just a second there. Just gonna leave them a phone call. Leave them there. Just take the red one.
Got it.
Can you go a little close? Just behind the team.
Somewhere here? Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Brenda Belanger, otherwise known as Freedom BB. I thought I'd come on and explain to you why I chose this winter to go out and stand and get signatures for Alberta independence. And I think it became quite clear when our government started using word salad. They started it back in COVID with the fringe minority, the misogynists, and everything else. Well, now they're using it with respects to the recession they're calling it a technical recession. Now, I took the time to do my due diligence and looked up the word technical recession. It does not exist. So, me being the person that I am, I looked a little bit deeper. What we are in is what's called a stagflation. Now, this happened back in the 70s, and I'm not sure how many of you remember back in the 70s what happened, okay, where we went into a full-fledged recession. During that recession, what ended up happening was it was an inflation issue as well as a supply and demand issue. And this is where our government was overspending, and their policies kept our resources in the ground, which caused us to go into a major recession where our interest rates on mortgages, if some of you remember, was pretty close to 18 to 20%. And that is exactly what's happening today, okay, is the fact that it is the policies that is going in place from the federal government that's keeping our oil and gas in the ground at this point. It's keeping the oil and gas in the ground at this point, and it's stopping us from prospering. So it's here with the Bill 63 where they're not allowing us. Now, we know that there is a supply and demand for our oil and gas. But Bill 63 is keeping that oil and gas in the ground, and what is that doing in turn? It's causing a recession. And if it was Alberta's choice, we would be saying, pump it. We would have storage units so that we could ship it out. Okay, it's policies like the no pipelines and everything else that's keeping Canada in a debt. So I think it's time that Alberta gets sovereignty where we can control what we're doing, where we can keep our supplies so that times like this, it's available for us to utilize, so that Canada and Alberta does not have to suffer anymore. And this is all at the hands of the red tape of the federal government. So I'll give you a little history of what happened. Back in 73 and 79, there was an oil crisis. When I did some research, the difference now is when I did my research, it stated that the inflation started since COVID. And we've all seen it. We all know that the prices have went up and nothing has come down. Okay? We've seen policy after policy go through from the federal government that has basically put handcuffs on Alberta from producing and from prospering. And this is where our big issue comes in. They've cut our jobs and everything else on the federal level. So if there's no other reason for us to turn around and say we need our sovereignty, we need Alberta to make our choices, then this is a really good one. Because like I said, back in the 80s was the worst time. Now, if you have read the headlines, 52% of people are negligence on their mortgage at this point. They're behind on making their mortgage payments. 11% have already lost their home. Now, we all know that the government does not put full stats out there. And we know that they use a lot of word salad. So if there's ever a time for Canada and for Alberta to stand up and say enough is enough, that we need to be able to control our own province, now is the time, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Bibi. Okay, so we'll all come up to the front there. But while we're waiting for everybody to come to the front, I have a favor to ask of everybody in the room. And that is that they go to either Let's Talk Alberta, freedomcalendar.net, the Whistle Stops Facebook page, grab the posters and share them out to people in other areas. The algorithm has been killing us. So if you could do that, it's what I call the shampoo game. If you remember the Clairol shampoo commercials from the 70s and 80s, you tell two friends, and we'll tell two friends, and so on and so on and so on. So we can spread it out that way, because we have people saying they don't get the posters until 4 or 5 days after an event occurs. So that would be greatly appreciated.
I just read something in the comment section. This is very appalling. In Parliament, Mark Carney laughed about a Canadian losing his job and having to sleep on a friend's couch. That's the state of Canada right now. And I got people sliding on my DMs just of stories like this. Like they lose their jobs, things like that. And now within all news that we have, apparently there's something going with the oil patch jobs fleeing Canada, or specific Alberta. Elbows up, guys. Yeah, exactly. Elbows down, as up.
I saw someone wearing a T-shirt like that once. Something I meant to talk about earlier. How many people watched Danielle Smith talking about the estimated cost of becoming a new nation? Okay. So almost all of us saw it. So the Premier said that there's some estimation that Alberta becoming independent could cost upwards of $400 billion off the bat, $50 to $75 billion a year, and there was some other things in there. And she followed it up by saying they're going to do an actual, what was the word? Like they're going to look at it and try and get a proper estimate on what it would cost. Now, my first thought when I saw that was, man, I have to counter this. So I did a little bit of reading, a lot of research, wrote a blog, posted it at whistlestoptruckstop.ca. It's the first thing that comes up. Please check it out. But somebody pointed something out to me yesterday. Part of that $400 billion is what some people are saying Alberta needs to take of the national debt, our share of the national debt. Now, I have my own opinions on how much of the national debt Alberta owes, and I say it's zero. But let's say, for instance, that it is $180 billion or whatever they say. What is it going to be next year? Less? Sorry, everyone is saying less? Sorry, I can't hear you. More. Okay, so everyone feels that the national debt's going to be more next year. What about the year after that? What about in 10 years? Yeah. Is there anyone in Alberta that believes that our national debt anytime in the near future is going to go down? No. If people are concerned about taking a share of a national debt today at $180 billion, why are they not concerned about taking a share of the national debt in 5 years at $280 billion? That's right. Every time somebody opens their mouth in opposition to Alberta charting their own course, being sovereign, making their own decisions, they make the case for Alberta independence. Even the Premier. Without her knowing it, she just told Albertans that we need to do something now because it's going to be way worse in the future. We know this. And even worse than that, if you're unhappy with how the federal government spends money, what are you going to do about it? Where is the incremental gain that allows Alberta to determine the outcome of federal fiscal spending? It doesn't exist. So now that I think about it, I'm actually grateful that the Premier brought this up, because now we have another talking point that we need to discuss with Albertans and ask them, would you prefer to take a share of a national debt today, or would you prefer to take our share of the national debt in 5 years? It's your choice, so we should talk about it. Oh, and now it's time for questions or comments.
Hey, it's Brenda Belanger again. Just so you know, when I did my due diligence and my research, it is 15% of the national debt that Alberta actually has to take with them, so if that helps you.
I just missed it. So 15% you said of the national debt?
So when I did my due diligence of trying to figure out, when we were originally talking about this like over a year ago, and when I was doing my Wednesday night lives kind of thing, I did my due diligence, looked into it. We are to take 15% of that actual debt, and at the time, this was before the new budget came out, and this was last year, that came out to be $200 billion. And when I did my due diligence at that point, I was going off of Stats Canada, where we were making $474 billion that was going, the GDP that was going to Alberta or to Ottawa, and at that time Alberta was only getting $240 billion back out of that $474 billion, and it said that we would be, if we separated it, would be 15% we would have to take with us. So I'm not sure where her numbers are coming from, because I question that too.
Well, so since then, our federal government opened the floodgate of immigration, which actually brought the actual percentage per capita down to closer to 10 or 12 right now. And then it's very interesting when you speak about the debt, because we cannot speak about the debt without speaking about the Canada Pension Plan. And the Canada Pension Plan, they owe us minimum 180 billion. We up to 345. So my take on that, if ever that come to the negotiation table, is that, you know what? We're getting out of the pension plan, you erase our debt, and that's it. We're paying yearly $3 billion more than what we receive for the pension plan. That $3 billion means, once you compound it, within 10 years, we would already have $50 billion investment fund just with our pension plan. So the pension plan, the way it's structured right now, just to keep, just basically to keep the premium at what they are, we would build up upward of 50 million, even if we start with zero. So that's point number one. Point number two, about that national debt, I believe that there's another point that can be made about the money that was transferred to other province from here to build Canada. So I believe that you can twist that as well. The federal asks you for a portion of national debt. We say, okay, no problem, give us the bill, and then we turn down to Quebec. And we say, you know what? You're responsible of a third of it. So give us 30 billion. PEI, give us 4 billion. Nova Scotia, give us 2 billion. And then at that point, it's a bit irrelevant. As for the 400 billion of independence, I believe it's a super deal. Because right now, we're leaving 30 billion on the table to Ottawa every year. That means that 400 billion will be amortized in something like 15 years. Everybody would love to pay their house in 15 years. That's a good investment. So these are my answers about these fiscal things. I believe it's irrelevant at this point, because we are the only province in this country that brings new money in the country every day. Like every day that goes, Alberta sells out of the province 4 million barrel. At $100 a barrel, that's $400 million of new money that didn't exist in this country that are coming in. So there's no reason that we might be in recession. There's no reason that we might feel any hurt with the work that we've done at -40, pumping and unjamming these wells and making sure that the oil flow. There's no reason to let anybody hinder us on that. And that gives us something that no other province have. Because the only thing that Bay Street does in Toronto is recycling money. They're like big money laundering and big washers. Quebec the same. No, there are 9 million populations sustain each other. There's no new creation. There's no new money coming from outside. We are the only one that provide that. So, and this is why as well that they won't let us go easily.
One of the major problems with the conversation around these things right now is that the side for the status quo is very, they talk about these numbers. They throw out a number like $400 billion. Oh my goodness, there's $400 billion we're gonna have to pay. But they never talk about the other side. And there's always two sides to this conversation. That's why we want to talk about it. Okay, so I don't want to look at Alberta divorcing from Canada anymore. I want to look at it as a business deal that's just ending. Right? We're business partners. We no longer want to do business in that way, whatever we're going to split. Well, you look at your debts, you look at your assets, and then you negotiate it. Yeah. If you get a divorce, you look at your debts, you look at your assets, and then you negotiate. You don't ever just say, oh, there's all this debt that you have to think about, and never talk about the asset. Bases, military bases, national parks, those types of things. Oh, you're going to have to pay for that. Sure, okay, well, I guess we get 15% of the other national parks that we have an interest in paid to us. You see how this goes? And this is why, and this is what you folks can do this too. When you hear these things, I would encourage you to listen very carefully what the status quo loving advocates tell you about Alberta sovereignty, and use that to explain to them why the conversation doesn't end with what they're saying, and the continuation of the conversation actually flips their point right on its nose. I do believe that all paths lead to Alberta independence. I believe that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. And Let's Talk Alberta invites every Albertan to attend our events and challenge us on these ideas. Maybe they'll change my mind, and maybe I'll become a forever Canadian. Who knows? But they're going to have to come here and start having the conversations with us.
Yeah. Shane was saying that he invited Lukasik in one of these events. I mean,
That'd be awesome.
yeah, absolutely. Speaking as well of the pension fund, Canadian pension fund, Canada did something terrible about our pension fund 6 years ago. They put your pension fund, our pension fund, on their balance sheet. So now the country is borrowing based on the money that is yours, that they have. So what Canada has done, you probably all have know a guy in your entourage that sells you investment, like an investment guy portfolio that sells you life insurance and all that. Well, what Canada has done is like, as if they were a broker, they basically took your life insurance, put there on their balance sheet to borrow money on it. So the CPP is a very dangerous system that will explode and crash, probably the first amongst all of them. So I believe that it's time to start protecting. And again, when I was saying that we gain 3 billion more than what we pay, I believe that in the province, I believe there's something around 1.5 million people that receive CPP right now. Well, we could give 10,000 bonus just to transfer your CPP fund to the Alberta Pension Fund as an entry token, and then increase your monthly premium by 20%, and would still have a 2 billion to put aside. So,
can I ask a question for the people who are watching online? Yes? Okay. One of the questions that it was asked is from a member. He was at the event with the folks from the Alberta Federation of Labor, on which Gil McGowan was there. And he says, and I quote, he says that separatists do not represent us. What's your response to that to that remark?
I agree. I don't represent anyone. I represent me. I'm here sharing my opinions, my ideas, and my statements. If you agree with me, great. If you don't agree with me, I would like to hear why, and we'll engage in a conversation about it. But I represent what I believe.
I don't believe that we're separatists. I believe that we're sovereigntists.
well, and that's a big distinction, and this is what helps Quebecer, the distinction between being separatist and sovereignist. In Quebec, everybody made this distinction because we have 60 years, 7 years, even I will debate 170 years of separatist movement making a difference. And this is why after the 95 referendum, it was not such a defeat, because it just sent a signal, well, we need to be more sovereign than separatist. And this is exactly what Quebec did. We became more sovereign than separatist. And that include finding all loopholes, constitutionally or not, to gain independence and to gain our own stuff. You know what? The same day that Premier Smith adopted, the first law that she adopted at the Ledge here was the Sovereign Alberta within United Canada. So good for her. She barked hard. Second law, Bill 2, right after that she voted it, she added conditions to get out of the CPP. So what message did she send to Ottawa? I'm barking hard, but don't worry, you can keep the money. That's exactly what she told Ottawa. The same day in Quebec, at the Quebec legislature, they voted for all provincial MLAs and equivalent that they won't have to pay allegiance to the king anymore. In 2022, Quebec passed another law saying that we don't want royal assent anymore. Once it's voted in here, it's law. And the lieutenant governor is just a clerk for Ottawa. And the day they passed that law, which was unanimously voted within 5 parties, okay, in the room, they went and put a for sale sign in front of the lieutenant governor house, and they say, our next step is we won't pay anymore for that girl or that guy. You pay. You want him to stay here, you pay for him. Last thing that they've done, when Carney brought King Charles III, King of Canada, to give the throne speech, Quebec, at the same time that the king was giving the throne speech, they passed a law, again unanimously voted at the Quebec legislature, that it was a secession with all crown, any crown link. And they sent a courier to deliver that to the king in hand, saying that Quebec will not answer to anything from the crown anymore from start for now. And you know what happened with these bold moves, which are non-constitutional? Nothing. Nothing. Not a lawsuit, not a token, nothing.
Aren't they going to withhold their transfer payments?
Their transfer payment? No, they like the transfer payment. I will talk about transfer payment though. In '98, after a referendum, we started thinking, okay, what else can we grab? So no, we solved the immigration. So Quebec takes care of all of its immigration. And the way they do it, and I lived it even in 1981. My sister is Vietnamese. We adopted her. My dad brought her parents in 1987. And even at that time, when you were immigrating to Quebec, you have a mandatory 5 days, it was 5 half days, where we tell you the history of Quebec, the values of Quebec and all that, and at the end of these 5 days, you have to sign a social contract. And if you don't sign that social contract, no driver's license, no health care, no social support, nothing. So, and if I said, so the dad of my sister didn't want to sign the social contract, so what happened? He went to Toronto. You're not welcome here. So in my book as well, I speak about that. What is the Alberta identity? It's important to know who we are and our value. I moved here, I was 35 years old, and I can tell you that I'm probably more Albertan sovereignist than most Albertans that I know. And because I embrace the value, I married a girl from here, and my 4 kids are born here at the Grey Nuns and in Edmonton, and so I embrace the Alberta spirit. So in my book, I speak about the 8 heartstrings that I identify what makes an Albertan Albertan. And it's important that we start asserting our identity, our culture, because we do have a specific culture, a specific identity. And when we put together a ministry of immigration to control who comes and lives here and get our driver's license, we have to tell them who we are as a society. We have to agree on that and tell them, this is what an Albertan is. This is what we believe in. And here's a social contract. You will respect our value. Otherwise, you are not welcome in this territory.
I 100% agree that we're not separatists. We're for an independent, sovereign Alberta. However, just so you know, they came out with the CEPI list today. And I'm very, very disappointed. I didn't make it.
I wasn't even there neither.
Yeah,
I'm disappointed too.
You made it. Tanya made it. Corey made it. I didn't make it. I'm very disappointed.
Just for the record, if you have comments or anything, just ask for the microphone, because of the stream we cannot hear anything. It's just wow, 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 wow. Thanks.
Is there? Does anyone have any things that they hear from people in their circles? You know, any objections that they don't know how to answer, things like that?
One of the biggest questions that I had, and one of the concerns I came across was, why does Danielle Smith want to take control of our CPP And why does she want to use it against us? What are we going to tell these people? How do we explain it to them so that they understand what's happening with Ottawa sending our money away as it is compared to what it's going to do? I know you did touch base on it, but how do we address these people? Because that was one of the biggest things.
Well, I believe we have to address these people about the reality that the CVP has been used to increase our debt, that it's been used against Canadian, and that if we repatriate that money back in the province, it's way easier to go complain and go to the office in Edmonton than in Ottawa. It's way easier to learn what's happening with the investment from the from the global TV Calgary than from CBC Ottawa. It's way easier to know what happened to the money and to be able to keep an eye on it than the way they do it in Ottawa. And finally, it's way easier as well to know that that money will stay in Alberta. If I believe a condition for a good, healthy pension fund is to keep the money in your province, because that stimulates investment in your province. What control do you have on the CPP that have 78% of your money invested around the world? And now suddenly there's a war in Iran and it affects your money. And then suddenly there's something happening in Eastern Europe, it affects your money, because this is where the money is right now. So in Quebec, the pension plan has to invest minimum 40% of all the funds, either within Quebec and up to 60% within Canada. So, and a lot of financial people say, well, that's crazy. Well, it's crazy because you don't believe in you. If you think it's crazy enough not to reinvest in your grandkids' business and in your kids' business and in your infrastructure, in better road and all that, well, then I believe you're crazy. No? And money is worth more than life for you. And yeah, I don't want to be your friend. Is that the case?
Oh.
One of the other concerns as a chapter leader, because I was in Edmonton, all over Parkland and Lac St. Anne County, plus here in Whitecourt, the other concern that came out was the old age security, and if we leave, how do the seniors benefit from it?
Well, for starters, I don't have a crystal ball, and I can't say what exactly will happen, but I can tell you that I do not believe that Albertans would leave Albertans behind. Any federal entitlements that support people right now should, and if I can do anything about it, will continue in an independent Alberta. I mean, why would we do anything other than that? That sounds to some like it would cost some money, and to them I say I really don't care, because if somebody is relying on that and they need it, we cannot leave them behind. A sovereign Alberta isn't about taking from people, it's about making sure that people have a better future, a better outlook. The other thing to remember is that there is a cost to Confederation, and that cost is passed on to each and every Albertan, whether it's in a tax or a levy or like an excise tax or a tariff that results from ridiculous federal policies or all sorts of things. If we can remove ourselves from those things and take control of them, it's logically we can say that our cost of living should go down. If we're not subsidizing a federal government, if we're not paying for a federal government, then we should have more disposable money. So not only would Alberta, if any of us have anything to do with it, advocate for the continuation of any federal entitlement, but our costs of living should go down. Our energy costs should go down. We shouldn't be paying. Look at what the carbon tax alone did to our utility bills. I mean, seniors had a hard time before that, and then our federal government just arbitrarily starts pumping carbon tax onto everything, taxes on taxes on taxes, and now we have seniors. We're talking about seniors. Yeah, the people that built this country. Let me tell you something. A fella came to the Whistle Stop Cafe this morning. He's a sheriff. And he's one of the sheriffs that has to help repossess things, deliver, recovery orders, things like that. And you know what he said? It's getting way worse than it was before. And you know who he has to go visit most to take their things? Seniors. Because they can't afford life right now. They can't afford their vehicles. They're getting stuff repossessed constantly. He says, it's absolutely insane. He's never seen anything like it. So when I see that newspaper with that pretty little bus with Fabio in there talking about how everything should stay the same because it's so great, I wonder, why does he hate senior citizens? Why does he not want to strip away this parasitic loss that Albertans face within Confederation to the tune of somewhere between $20 and $30 billion a year? And why doesn't he want to improve the lives of Albertans? It makes no sense to me. Was Max pointing at me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, just to that comment, just so you understand how Canada actually doesn't care about people, we met a volunteer in Brooks, I believe. She just got retired. She only got her first CPP check. Care to guess, she worked for 25 years. She probably watches online right now. She was working for 25 years. She only got $260. Her first CPP check was $260. That's the ultimate smack in the face, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, and what should people expect? The CPP is not it's not something that we choose to contribute to. It is a compelled investment by law, employers and employees. It has the worst return just about of any investment you can make over your lifetime. It's something like 2% if you factor everything out from what you get. It's not transferable to you can't will the fund to your beneficiaries or anything like that. It's an absolutely terrible investment, and it's pathetic that our government does things like this and then expects seniors to live on this pittance. And then to top it all off, they just keep on jacking the price of living up, so that what do they do then? Offer them maid? Oh, you can't afford to live? Well, we can offer you maid. Very compassionate response.
Speaking of maid, my oldest son is in the Royal Navy. He's a sonar operator on the only half-broken submarine that we have in the country. He's in mission right now, and he was telling me before going that 2 weeks ago his allowance abroad has been cut by half, the same day that Carney gave another $3 billion to Ukraine. One thing, last year as well, this past week, we celebrate the first anniversary of the death of the cousin of my wife, Corey, who was in the Special Force starting 16. He retired at 45, came back to Alberta. The last mission he did, he broke both hips just before COVID. And the veterans and the Department of National Defense refused to operate him and to change his hip because he refused to get vaccinated. So we said, as long as he's not getting vaccinated, we won't do the operation. Finally, a year ago, he went and tried to solve his hip problem. He's 47 years old, walk with a cane and in pain all the time. And they offered him maid if he was not happy. Well, he killed himself the next day. So this is what the Canadian government does to us.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just curious, more of a statement. How many people are seeing CPP being charged twice on people's checks nowadays? A number of people have been talking about that. Another thing, I think Nenshi, he was jumping on board with Danielle Smith and how much it's going to cost on that $400 billion deal. So that was something. And I guess the other thing, it's really sad, all of us people that are supposed to be independent, and we aren't separatists, we're independence-minded, if you can look at the dictionary and understand it. We are using our own money to do everything that we're doing. The unions for the teachers, the unions for, let's say, the nurses and other places, plus the government is using our tax money or union dues to fight us. So it shows that those people really aren't serious when they're unable to go and do their own thing. So that's just an opinion.
Well, on the bright side, Nenshi could always just mine for more gold. Sorry, I've been waiting to say that for like a week now. You're right, Brad. The status quo wants to remain, and it's fighting for it, for sure. What we're seeing right now is the tip of the iceberg on the wailing and gnashing of teeth that we're going to see when we try and upset the apple cart, right? Because what we're talking about is a big change. And there's a lot of people who benefit so greatly from the current system, the current structure, the status quo. They do not want to lose that. Whether it is a former MLA deputy premier who has his eye on a Senate seat, or a former premier that resigned after a 51% approval in a leadership race who has his, who's a member of the Privy Council of Canada, or maybe it's a premier who now can speak French and has her eyes on federal politics. Ben describes like the federal claw reaching down to our provincial politicians that as a reward for their service to maintaining peace, order, and good government and installing them in federal positions where there's a pension. You know, we see it all the time. And it's like we're surprised when it happens. These people have a vested interest in this structure because the colonial British imperialistic method has always been to install a governor or a leader or somebody to maintain control and order, and then they're rewarded richly with knighthoods and money and perhaps a wife 30 years younger in the case of John A. Macdonald, although I'm sure it was love. But this is what we're fighting, and this is an age-old tradition of the feudal system, right? You have lords and barons and these people who manage other people. They do the work. They contribute to the economy, to the cause, and then they allow them certain privileges and rights to exist, and they keep the order, and they're rewarded for it. It's no different now than it was a few hundred years ago, except for the technology that we have available to see what they're doing. So it is no surprise, and they are using our money, of course. The state-funded media, $1.5 billion per year.
1.8 this year.
1.8 this year. Oh, they got a raise.
Only for CBC.
Oh, what?
Yeah, 1.8 only for CBC.
Holy good gravy. 1.8 billion for CBC.
Yeah.
So then they use that money to write hit pieces on us and call us separatists and fringe, and you know we're the outcasts of society. You're 100% right, and that's why it's so important that the only way we can overcome this is if we start having these conversations, we're bold with our opinions, and we support what we can. Right now, if you share my opinion on where Alberta should be, there are a multitude of organizations out there that you can support, you can get involved with, you can help pursue the conversation or a specific outcome. We're not specific outcome oriented, although we have personal opinions where we want to go. We're about the conversation. So if we all step up and do something, we're going to have some success. But if we don't, then that machine that uses our money and our resources against us is going to win. So it's up to us.
So my question is regarding CPP. Do you guys actually believe that there is money there, or do you think it is a Ponzi scheme? Because I'm 58 years old. I've been working since I'm 16 years old. I've probably maxed out my CPP for 20 years. My husband was the same. He worked in the oil patch, made top dollar. He retired a little early, a couple years early. He gets about $850 a month after taxes. I believe that people don't even realize until it is time to retire how little money they get for what they contributed and what their employer contributed for them for their entire work life. And I think that that is something that people really need to educate these young people on, because they don't realize that if they would have been in control of their own CPP money, of what they put in and what their employer put in at a reasonable rate of interest, that they would probably have over $1 million by the time they retire.
You are 100% right. You called it exactly what it is. It is a Ponzi scheme, and it was designed that way. The current working generation pays for the generation collecting. It is a Ponzi scheme. It's the exact definition. But here's an interesting thing. Even without them touching all that money that went to Indian students, as of this year, in 2026, it is now running at a deficit. That means by 2033, it will be drained dry at the current rate. That's not that long. I said 2033.
1 year after I'm supposed to retire.
So it will be drained by then, and that is, and then we're all going to be, unless they start printing more money to fill it back up, we're all going to be without. That's about the year I retire too.
Yeah,
but
and
I
like
start
I'm to the
collecting.
point now, I'm just like, keep it, let's just go. You know, like, I mean, it's a terrible thing to have to fight over. And I feel like, you know what, if that's what they want to keep, let them keep the CPP. We'll become independent and we can fill that bank account like pretty fast, I think.
I agree, but I don't want them to just keep it. I want to negotiate with them so that they use it against the debt.
Yeah, but by the way, the CPP, the way it's structured, it's everything that comes in needs to get out. That's how they manage always. And then the investment fund of CPP is quite recent. That's a big difference when I compare to Quebec. Quebec, they started the pension fund with the investment fund together. So instead of getting so the CPP system is that if they need to pay $9 billion of pension, they will collect $9 billion to the workers. And then the philosophy is to adjust whatever they charge to cope with what they have to pay, right? So the system itself was started and functioned to be an in-out without any fund. And then suddenly, I think even I think it's under Harper, we say, well, it doesn't work and we cannot keep on increasing with 20% population pension. We won't be able to keep on increasing as much. So then they created the investment fund. And again, if we create an Alberta equivalent, it needs to follow the Quebec model, investment fund from day one, to make sure that it's a real pension fund and not just like, $2 billion here in, $2 billion out. Yeah.
My name is Stan. A lot of gray hair in here. We got 4 children, and I think 3/4 are on board of what needs to be done. They understand, but I just wonder how we can reach the demographic coming up.
That's a really good question. Can you hear me? That's a really good question. The question was, how do we reach the younger demographic? The reality is, younger people, even though I'm a young person, right, still, they don't come to these things often. Some do, very rarely. It's just not their thing.
Me too.
Yeah, Shane's actually younger than me, believe it or not. They don't come to these things, but they show up when it's needed, when they're needed. If you watch the lineups that were happening at certain events over from January until beginning of May, there were tons of young people standing in those lineups. Why? Because they know that they have to show up when it's time. They just don't often come to things like this. They're spending all day working. They're tired. They're raising families. They're spending time with their families, and they want to relax. They're not going to come out and listen to us talk about these things. They already know what they're going to do. However, if you want to reach them, or if you want them to be reached, then I'm going to go ahead and put this back on you, because that's what we're trying to tell you. This conversation isn't just in this room. You have to start having the conversations where you go. And if you have younger people in your lives, you need to talk to them about these things. Ask them what their outlook is for their future. Ask them if you could change something, what would it be? And then start having these conversations and make sure they're aware of the things that you're learning here. You folks that are here in these rooms and watching online are going to be the disciples of whatever change that you want to see in the future. And you bring it out to the world with you and be advocates for what you want to see and encourage other people to follow your lead.
The other thing is as well that I started, just the season is not good for that because we're entering summer. But back in August, so it's maybe 2 months ago now, or a month and a half ago, I sat for 3 hours with 6 university students, all NDP staffers in Edmonton, and you'll be surprised how more conservative than they even believe they are. Once you open and discuss with them, and I truly believe in that format, in smaller format, and at the U of A there's over. I had my office at the U of A for 7 years. At the U of A there's over 200 different student organizations, and I believe that's the way to reach them. Is to contact their, the student association of every faculty, and just asking for a little chat. 12, 20 people, because the thing that they do, and just these 6 were gathered within 2 days of meeting one, because they all connect, they all are in social media and stuff like that, and this is how they deal together. So I'm preparing and with the help of anyway. My objective, my goal is starting September when the school starts back. Just concentrate on college campuses and universities, because they are open. And even though they tell they're NDP, when you start talking to them, I was able to have these 6 NDP staffers. None of them, one was Hindu, the other one Muslim, the other one, and there were 4 of them were first-generation immigrant in Alberta. I was able to get them agree with me that we need to protect the Judeo-Christian values in our laws in this province. So it's just a question to discuss and why, and to present yourself. I open my discussion, say, okay, everybody, here's my bias. I'm a white, married, evangelical Christian, conservative. No, Daniel Smith is a leftist compared to my values. So this is where my speech will come from. And it seemed that just that diffused a lot of objection, because then they were not surprised when I would bring shocking discussion, and we just agreed not to go, like when it came for the residential school, I have a very strong opinion on that, and we agreed not to talk about it, because it was hurting what their concept and all that. Okay, let's switch subject. Let's go back to what we can agree, and I believe this is how we can reach that young generation.
So we have to talk to each other.
Yeah, that's...
Kind of like Let's Talk Alberta?
For those who are watching online, if you have questions, just put on the chat and put exclamation marks, and we'll go through that. I say that because I said some people send me message by text message. No, go on the chat. Thanks.
There's a question in the center there, Jasper.
Okay. My question is in regards to what you, Scott, talked about earlier in regards to people wanting or being drawn because of corruption, because of them wanting to rise up in the echelons of society. So how are we seeing that separatism is somehow going to correct that? How do we know that our future leaders are going to be any less corrupt than the ones that we've been under this far?
Because we, the people, will do so. And by that, I mean, right now we've had no input in how the system works up until now. It has not been any of our decision. But moving forward, we will have to insist that we have constitutional conventions and put in clauses in our Constitution that protect us against that type of thing. We, the people, have got to step up and make our voices heard. So once we have a successful vote, then we need to hold constitutional conventions from one end of the province to the other, over and over again, until we come up with a constitution and a set of laws and values that reflects what the people of the province want, not what the elites want, which is the way it is set up now. And it is actually set up to protect them, anybody that becomes corrupt. But we need to make sure that that doesn't happen under the new system. And we have to make our voices heard as people to do that.
I will tell you as well, another way is to pay better our politician. One way that is not very good in this province is that our MLAs don't have any pension. So when they get to the end of a mandate, they always have to prepare the after mandate. You have to realize that it's a tough job. It's 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. And while you do that, you develop a bunch of enemies, friends as well. And then when you see your mandate coming to an end, what do you do afterwards? No, and then you are susceptible and vulnerable to get offer from ATCO and from this and from that, like Kenny went right after to ATCO and others, because they need to think of a living afterwards. No, so I believe it's a bad strategy to scream about how much we pay our MLAs, because it's the best strategy for corruption. I believe that if an MLA is well paid with a good pension, or a minister, once he leaves function, well paid as well, first, because then we can get good candidate. I mean, I don't know if you know MLA Shane Getson. Well, Shane voluntarily took a 4-time cuts on his salary to become MLA because he could afford it, but he decided to afford it because Shane was in charge of pipelines for a big company. He was earning close to $500,000 a year. Now he's earning $100,000 a year. So, but if you want to bring good candidates, you have to pay them well. And I will always be an advocate to pay well our politicians, because that protects us from way bigger scandals, because they won't give that little pass for $2-3 billion to ATCO, and that other pass to Suncor for another $5 billion. And like at the end of the day, when you do the math, it's way better and it's a good protection against corruption to pay well your politicians.
I'm gonna give you the answer that nobody wants to hear. There is no guarantee. Nobody up here is going to tell you that it will be like that. No one can say it's going to be better and there will be less corruption and it's all going to be rosy. All I can tell you is that for the first time in Alberta history, there will be the opportunity to make sure that it goes the way we want it to. That's it. There's no other guarantee. We have an opportunity to self-determine. We have an opportunity for the first time in Canadian history for the people to write the Constitution that outlines what the government may or may not do. And then we have the opportunity to make sure that we follow through with it. That is it. If we go through all this trouble and we get our independence, we become sovereign, and then everyone goes and sits and watches TV again at night and doesn't participate in civics, the tyrants will do the same thing again. The corruption will prevail and we will lose. That's the reality. But if we treat civics as a responsibility and an obligation to not only ourselves but the future generations, then things start to change, then things happen the way we want them to happen. So it's up to us.
One of the comments that I just read online here on the comment section, this is very interesting, but the comment that the CPP will eventually drain expected by 2033. What's your source for that statement?
I have heard that before. So the comment is that the CPP will drain, as in Shane mentioned it's operating at a deficit. It won't, because it's legislated that it can't. What will happen is you'll have to pay more. Yeah. They'll take money from somewhere else and they'll put it into that to top it up. Period. That's all it will be. It won't drain. It's backed by the government, which means it's backed with the money in your wallet.
But it will drain. It will drain down. You're right, but not entirely, because the investment fund side of it will be drained entirely clean. So it will just be only money in, money out by 2033.
So I've done some research and stuff like that, and I've had the same question as to, you know, the whole concept of what stops us from becoming A or B kind of thing. The only thing I could come up with, and I'm wondering if you guys can foresee this, and if you have checked into this, is Norway. Norway became independent, and they went from the socialist, which is what pretty much Canada is, a socialist country, to a capitalist country. Can you see Alberta going in the same direction where, you know, we take back our resources, we take back our businesses over time, and actually give dividends back to the people? Is this the ideology that we're hoping for?
I just want to put a caveat to that, because Norway is extremely socialist still today. No, the taxation rate is 65% of your stuff, and so to call Norway a capitalist country, I don't believe so. What they've done in their socialist thing, they were able to accept that most of the dividend from the oil would be nationalized. That's what they've done, and because the nationalists, they were able to do that. They were able to say, okay, it will serve our country for long, but meanwhile they retain a ultra high taxation rate, a very controlling society, very controlling on everything that it can do. Norway is now the #1 country with electric cars because the government decided so. So they just prevent you to buy no. So I do look at them with their model for their investment fund. I believe it's a good model. But again, they can do that because they're socialist. So I would advocate for another model for our province. I believe the Heritage Fund is a good model. I believe that if we start keeping more money here and keep on growing this one, and then the other thing that I pray for our province is to start controlling our equalization payment by doing what Quebec does. I was talking to gentlemen here before, and what Quebec did in 1998, after the referendum, the government of Quebec decided to privatize all of their Crown corporation. By doing so, it put the Crown corporation under provincial rule, because according to our constitution, incorporation of a company is provincial. So by doing so, they shielded all of their assets from the calculation and integration from the federal government for equalization, including Hydro-Quebec, who became a private corporation. Second thing that they've done, they created a law that forced the private corporation Hydro-Quebec to give at a discount the first 5 terabytes of power produced to all Quebecers. So that special rate of Hydro-Quebec to all Quebecers give them $4 billion per year assured of equalization, just how the calculation is done. So what I've done, I took the law of Quebec and I applied it to Alberta with our gas and oil, and we could do the same. We could say, okay, that portion of royalties is paid in kind, so in oil and in gas, and now, starting tomorrow, every Albertan get a discount of 30 cents a liter on the first 100 liter when you pay at the pump, and the first 10 gigajoule to heat your house is free. And then if we could decide to do that without budging our budget, what that would create is basically Ottawa would be obligated to give us $2 billion more in equalization, or to remove $2 billion of participation in equalization. So it would be a net zero for our budget in the province. And if Alberta start barking, well, we just say, well, remove the one from Quebec and we'll remove ours.
I like that you brought up Norway, because, now fact check me on this, but I think Norway and Sweden split in the same year Alberta joined Confederation. Am I correct? Yeah, around there. 1905. So Norway is a great example. They're very socialist. They're taxed very high, but they get to choose. Norwegians choose the directions they want to go. They want to live socialist. It's up to them, and they're free to do so. Sweden, not quite so much. They want to do their own thing, but they're neighbors, and they trade, and they have a good relationship. But the key is they had differing values. They didn't want to be all under the same umbrella. They wanted to self-determine. So in the same year that Alberta was legislated into Confederation, they split and decided to each be sovereign and maintain neighbors. And I believe that's what Alberta could be within Canada. Just grab the mic so no one online can hear. That's the problem.
It's because what happens is that if you don't hold the microphone, people on the stream cannot hear. That's the way the format is.
So what I'm referencing is last night I was doing a live and we had went through the whole concept, did the fact checking, and technically Norway is classified as a capitalist country versus a socialist. But they do charge taxes. It's a 55% tax, but that tax goes into their social program, and at the end of the year they give a dividends. And it's similar to what Ben is saying with respects to, you know, that credit, like the first 100 liters and so on and so forth. But again, it is the people making the decision based on the Constitution, as Chris said. Okay, and it's not a takeover, and that's what I was referencing more so when it came to the Norway, not to mention the fact that Norway did model their slush fund off of Alberta. For those that don't know, they put $84 a barrel away compared to what we did, which was $10 a barrel here in Alberta because of most of our money going to the federal government.
Yeah, in fact, it's a social democracy like Quebec, by the way. Quebec proud itself to be the more socialist territory in North America, and good for them. No, like I don't care. I'm 4,000 kilometers away. That despite that, we can adapt these systems to our culture here.
The key is that we should decide, right?
Yes, that's the point.
Hello? Okay, I know this person there that was collecting a CPP, and one day he got a letter. He retired. He got a letter from the CPP saying they were going to reduce his pension. So what he did, he wrote a letter back and he said, okay, instead of reducing my pension, just refund me my contributions that I put in the CPP and I'll invest it in my own pension plan. And he sent the letter back and he said, because you know the CPP, they claim that they're making a return on their investment with their money, like 9%. But the return that the contributors put into there, they only get a return of about 3%. So he said, okay, send me my money back. I'll invest it myself in my own pension plan, and you can leave me alone after that. And so he sent him a letter back, and not only did they reinstate his full amount for a CPP, they give him a raise. Now that I'll be thinking, is that a possibility? Can you get your money back from the CPP and invest it in your own account, in your own pension plan?
I don't know for sure, but I just heard that at one time you could, but now you can't. I've never heard of it.
I guess a question. Oh, sorry.
Okay, it seems to be the way they responded. There could be a loophole there. There could be something that we could do something to get our money back.
I don't believe there is a way because it's a mandated fund. So you get back, and if that was the case and you could do that, that would mean that if you passed away, that money would be available to your family, but it's not. That money is, once you send it to them, they look after you, but that money goes on. The money that you're getting out is actually not even the money that you put in. It's the money from the generation working. It's a money in, money out system. It means that the current working people are paying for the people that are on retirement now. And that is one of the reasons why it's in trouble, because there's less and less population working at this time.
There is a way. There is a way that we can get our money out of the CPP. And that's through the legislation that says that any province that wants to do their own pension can apply to the government with notice. The government calculates how much money that province has paid in and how much money has been withdrawn, and they get the difference. So according to the LifeWorks report, our share as Albertans of the Canada Pension Plan is $343 billion, plus some interest. That's just the math. Now, here's the tricky part. There are opponents to this idea that say, well, how dare you, Alberta, because that's almost 50% of the pension fund, and you're only 15% of the population. And I'm like, okay, well, that's irrelevant to me because the legislation says we get the difference, from what we paid in to what we withdrew, that's what we get. And the math says $343 billion. If we're due 50% of the fund and we're only 15%, 15% of the population, where's the rest of the money? That's the question. But we can get it.
I have an online question here, and this is for Ben. For those people watching online, where do we get your book if you're not here on premises?
Amazon.ca. Just type enough or my name, Benoit Trudeau, and yeah, you'll find it.
Do we have any more questions? Because
we'll take one more question from the either online or in the room, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Long drive. I'm done with online questions. I don't have anyone here in my queue.
You guys aren't taking your room? No. Because it's all been paid for.
I have a question from when Mitch was up at the last town hall, that he was saying that there might be a booklet being published that has all the answers and from all the questions, or a lot of questions that we may have. Is there any status on where that booklet is, or being published, or anything?
I honestly can't comment to what Mitch is doing. I'm not sure what he would be referring to, but I can tell you that we do print and distribute trifolds with all sorts of different information. That's one of the initiatives that Let's Talk Alberta is doing, is trifolds or booklets or things like that go out to different communities. So if you're interested in something like that, sign up on the list back there, and we'll get in touch with you, and you can help us do that. The way we do it is we design a trifold with your input, with information that's relevant to you and your community, and then we get the graphic out to you. You get a few people together, print them out, take them to neighborhood mail, and mail them to the whole community. So that is a great initiative, and like I say, I can't comment to what Mitch is doing, but I know that we do a similar initiative, and it's available pretty much anytime. And I think that's it. We'll be around for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions or stories they want to share with us. But aside from that, I want to say thank you again for coming out. Thank you for your support.
I got something to say. Freedom Calendar is now on the list.
Oh, he's talking about the SEPI list. Freedom Calendar made it. Max didn't personally, but Freedom Calendar did.
It's great to be on a list.
So it's...
if we could get everybody's help putting the chairs away, it makes it go that much faster. We did earlier said thank you to him, and we're going down to have some chicken wings. You should go down to the Crown and Anchor. It's wing night tonight, so afterwards grab yourself some wings down at the Crown and Anchor, because that was very nice of Z to do tonight.
Alrighty, well, thank you very much for tuning in. We finally made it to the list. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one. Oh, you like my microphone?
I do.
It's a Sennheiser microphone. I want to show you my little microphone here. So when you come here to a town hall, this is the Q&A microphone. It's a Sennheiser microphone that I got about probably 2 months ago, and it works great. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next time.